Jasmine Crockett's statement, "They'll blame Democrats, skip work, and flip when it hits their wallet," is not just a sharp political jab, it's a mirror held up to a society that often refuses to see its own reflection. Her words come at a time when accountability has become a rare currency in politics and public life. What she's pointing out is more than partisanship, it's a pattern of human behavior, a tendency to deflect responsibility and find convenient scapegoats when things fall apart. Crockett's tone carries frustration, but it's also layered with truth. She speaks as someone who has seen the effects of hypocrisy firsthand, who has watched people complain about policies while ignoring their own role in the process. When she says they'll blame Democrats, she's addressing a culture that has turned blame into a national pastime, where political tribalism has replaced honest dialogue, and where every problem is spun into an attack rather than an opportunity for collective reflection. Her words expose the emotional contradictions that drive modern politics. People want affordable healthcare, better wages, and functioning systems, but they also want to believe in myths that deny the realities of economics and governance. They want change without sacrifice, progress without patience, and prosperity without policy. Crockett's statement cuts through these illusions by reminding us that real change requires responsibility. When she says they skip work, she's not just referring to physical absence from the workplace, but to a deeper absence, a refusal to participate meaningfully in the civic process, in building solutions, in contributing to the system they love to criticize. It's an observation about how easy it is to complain about government while refusing to engage in the hard, unglamorous work of democracy. Crockett's comment also touches on class and privilege. There's an underlying truth that those who can afford to ignore the consequences of policy often do so until those consequences directly affect them. When she says, "they'll flip when it hits their wallet," she's calling out that selective empathy, the sudden awareness that arises only when personal comfort is disturbed. It's the moment when theoretical politics become personal, when ideology crashes into reality. The phrase reveals a kind of moral inconsistency. People who once dismissed others' struggles suddenly change their tune when their own security is threatened. In that moment, Crockett isn't simply criticizing, she's observing a pattern of behavior that defines much of the political landscape, the fragile loyalty to beliefs that dissolve when faced with financial discomfort. Her remark resonates deeply because it captures how economics can shift ideology. When people feel insulated from hardship, it's easy to preach self-reliance or deny systemic problems. But once hardship arrives at their doorstep, the conversation changes. Crockett understands this cycle and uses her platform to highlight it unapologetically. Her words carry the weight of lived experience, of someone who represents communities that have long faced the harsh side of policy decisions, communities that don't have the luxury of flipping their stance based on convenience. She's speaking for those who can't afford to skip work, because every day missed is a day of lost wages, a day closer to eviction, a day further from survival. By contrasting that reality with the behavior of those who shift blame and avoid accountability, Crockett exposes the deep divide in how people experience the consequences of politics. This statement also underscores how narratives are manipulated in today's political environment. Blaming Democrats, or any group, becomes an easy deflection for people unwilling to face uncomfortable truths about their own political choices or economic systems. It's easier to attack a political party than to question the larger structures that perpetuate inequality or economic instability. Crockett's frustration lies in that avoidance, in the refusal to connect personal outcomes with systemic realities. Her comment suggests that as long as people continue to externalize blame, real progress will remain distant. It's a call to self-awareness, a challenge to look beyond slogans and see how our individual actions, voting patterns, and social attitudes contribute to the problems we claim to oppose. Crockett's ability to communicate this message with clarity and emotion is part of what makes her stand out. She doesn't dress her message in politeness or caution, she speaks plainly because the situation demands it. Her words resonate not just with those who share her political views, but with anyone tired of the performative outrage that dominates discourse today. There's a certain bravery in speaking truth that may make people uncomfortable, especially in a climate where honesty is often punished more than deceit. Crockett's statement embodies that courage. It's a declaration that accountability cannot be selective, that integrity must survive even when it's inconvenient. Her message is also an invitation to reflection. It challenges individuals to think about how they respond when adversity strikes. Do we search for someone to blame, or do we examine our own beliefs and actions? Do we remain consistent in our values, or do we flip when reality challenges our comfort? Crockett's insight is that hypocrisy doesn't just exist in politics, it exists in the people who fuel it, in the public that rewards emotional outrage over rational thought. In many ways, her statement mirrors the larger struggle between truth and perception. Politics has become less about policy and more about identity, about which side one belongs to rather than what's right or effective. By highlighting this tendency to blame Democrats, Crockett is calling out the erosion of collective accountability. Her frustration comes from watching people who oppose solutions simply because of who proposes them, not because of their merit. It's a symptom of a society where pride has become more important than progress. She's pushing back against that mindset, urging people to stop letting partisanship blind them to reality. Jasmine Crockett's words reveal not just political insight but also social psychology. They show how fear, insecurity, and ego can shape public opinion more than facts ever could. When people feel threatened, financially or emotionally, they search for someone to fault. Politicians, media outlets, and online echo chambers feed that instinct, turning complex issues into blame games. Crockett's statement slices through that fog, exposing the cycle for what it is, an avoidance of responsibility disguised as outrage. She forces the listener to confront how easily emotions can override logic and how selective outrage can become a tool for manipulation. Through her bold expression, Crockett gives voice to a frustration that many share but few articulate. She's addressing a national problem of moral inconsistency, the tendency to expect accountability from others but resist it for ourselves. Her words carry the urgency of a truth long ignored, one that insists that progress will only come when people stop pointing fingers and start examining their own role in the system they inhabit. The phrase, flip when it hits their wallet, carries a raw honesty that cuts through the noise of political talking points and exposes something deeply human about our relationship with money, conviction, and morality. When Representative Jasmine Crockett spoke those words, she wasn't just making an observation about politics, she was holding up a mirror to society's fragile sense of loyalty and integrity. Her message calls out how easily some people's political views, moral positions, or so-called principles crumble the moment financial pressure enters the equation. It is a piercing reminder that true belief is tested not when life is comfortable, but when the costs of holding that belief become real. Crockett's phrase echoes through political debates, workplace conversations, and even social movements, because it describes a truth that transcends party lines, the uncomfortable reality that money often reveals what people truly value. Her statement draws attention to how financial self-interest drives much of modern political behavior. Many citizens speak passionately about their ideals, arguing fiercely about policies they claim to stand for, but when those policies begin to touch their own pockets, their enthusiasm fades. What makes her observation so powerful is that it's not rooted in cynicism, but in realism. Crockett has seen firsthand how financial instability affects communities and how economic pain can shift entire political landscapes. Her words suggest that when people's wallets are untouched, it's easy to moralize about others' struggles. But when inflation, job loss, or policy change impacts their own comfort, suddenly empathy grows, not because of understanding, but because of self-interest. She highlights this pattern to expose the difference between compassion and convenience. Real empathy exists when one can understand others' pain without having to experience it personally, but Crockett suggests that in today's political climate, empathy has become transactional, appearing only when one's own privileges are threatened. Crockett's tone, while sharp, reflects frustration with a public that too often treats democracy like a consumer product. Many people want results without sacrifice, benefits without costs, justice without disruption. The line, flip when it hits their wallet, captures that contradiction perfectly. It speaks to a collective desire for change so long as it doesn't inconvenience us. Her statement asks whether people are truly committed to their stated values or merely perform them when it's easy. This question cuts deep because it doesn't only apply to politicians or activists, it applies to everyone. Whether it's supporting worker rights, healthcare access, or environmental protection, Crockett's words challenge citizens to examine how easily they abandon those causes when they feel personally inconvenienced. Her observation also reveals how economic anxiety shapes public opinion. In times of uncertainty, fear often overrides rationality. People who once advocated for fairness may suddenly retreat into self-preservation when they sense financial risk. Political actors and media outlets understand this dynamic and exploit it skillfully, manipulating fear to drive division and loyalty. Crockett's phrase calls that manipulation out by naming the trigger, the wallet. Once finances are touched, fear spreads, and with it, anger. That anger becomes a weapon, redirected toward whichever group or party is easiest to blame. Her statement shows how predictable and destructive that cycle has become, and how easily economic discomfort can be used to fracture social unity. The moral weight of Crockett's words lies in their demand for consistency. She's not condemning people for feeling financial pain, she's condemning the hypocrisy of pretending to hold strong values while letting money dictate those values. Her phrase invites a deeper conversation about integrity. What does it mean to stand for something when standing for it costs you something? It's a question that reaches beyond politics into every area of life. In workplaces, in communities, and in relationships, the same principle applies. People often proclaim loyalty, fairness. Her words also reveal the emotional fragility that often accompanies privilege. When she says, flip, it implies not just change, but reversal, a complete abandonment of belief once personal impact is felt. For those insulated from hardship, the sudden experience of loss or limitation can feel unbearable, even when it's something others endure daily. Crockett's statement highlights how this fragility influences political behavior. People who never cared about healthcare reform begin to care once they face medical debt. Those who dismissed the struggles of underpaid workers suddenly understand when layoffs hit home. The problem isn't the change of heart, it's the selective awareness that required personal suffering to awaken empathy. Crockett's choice of words also carries rhetorical brilliance. The simplicity of "when it hits their wallet" makes her message universal. Everyone understands what it means for something to hit the wallet. It's an equalizer, a reminder that money touches every aspect of life. Yet she uses it not to talk about economics alone, but to expose the moral fragility hidden behind economic decisions. The wallet becomes a metaphor for where one's priorities truly lie. In this sense, Crockett is not just criticizing behavior, she's diagnosing a national mindset where financial comfort often outweighs social justice. Her comment forces a re-evaluation of what it means to be politically mature. In a healthy democracy, citizens should be able to support policies based on principle, even when those policies come with personal cost. But Crockett's statement reveals that much of the electorate operates on short-term self-interest, shifting allegiances depending on who offers the easiest financial relief. This fickleness undermines not only political stability but moral credibility. When belief systems are dictated by convenience, the very foundation of democracy weakens. Crockett's frustration reflects the exhaustion of trying to lead in an environment where values can be bought, traded, or abandoned as soon as economic pressure rises. At its core, her statement carries a challenge to authenticity. It asks whether people's political and moral choices are rooted in conviction or transaction. It exposes the uncomfortable truth that many who claim to value fairness and justice are willing to compromise both when their own circumstances are affected. Crockett's insight pushes beyond party lines and enters the realm of human psychology, where self-interest battles with conscience. Her words serve as both a warning and a wake-up call, that until people learn to separate moral integrity from material comfort, the cycle of blame and hypocrisy will continue to define public discourse. Her phrase, "flip when it hits their wallet," captures the quiet betrayal that happens every time society chooses comfort over conscience, every time economic fear silences empathy, and every time the pursuit of personal security outweighs the pursuit of justice. It is not merely an accusation, it is an observation of how fragile our convictions have become in a world where the value of belief is too often measured in dollars and cents. Jasmine Crockett's voice represents more than just a single political figure speaking her truth. It represents a new generation of leadership rising in the halls of power, one that is unafraid to challenge hypocrisy, privilege, and the comfortable lies that have long shaped political discourse. When she speaks, there is no hesitation, no sugarcoating, and no fear of backlash. Her words are sharp because they are meant to pierce the complacency that too often defines the establishment. Crockett stands in a space where courage meets clarity, where calling out injustice is not just a choice but a responsibility. Her refusal to conform to the polished politeness of political tradition is precisely what makes her voice powerful. She exposes what many know but are too afraid to say, that the system rewards silence, and those who dare to speak truth are often branded as troublemakers instead of truth-tellers. Her emergence as a prominent voice reflects the frustration of a generation that is tired of political performances that prioritize optics over outcomes. Crockett's leadership style speaks to authenticity. She doesn't just play the game, she questions the rules themselves. This authenticity resonates deeply with people who feel unseen or unheard, people who have grown cynical watching politicians debate endlessly without delivering tangible change. Her presence challenges that fatigue because she embodies something rare in politics, emotional honesty paired with intellectual precision. When she addresses hypocrisy, it's not for applause or spectacle, it's because she understands that accountability is the foundation of democracy. Without it, all that remains is theater. Her boldness, however, does not exist in isolation. It reflects a broader shift in the political landscape, where women, particularly women of color, are claiming their space and redefining what leadership looks like. For too long, voices like hers were dismissed as too emotional or too aggressive, labels designed to silence those who refuse to fit into polite political molds. But Crockett turns that narrative on its head. She shows that passion is not weakness, and that truth, even when uncomfortable, is necessary for progress. Her willingness to challenge those who misuse their platforms or distort reality shows that integrity can still thrive in spaces dominated by power games and partisanship. Crockett's rise also exposes how deeply entrenched double standards remain in politics. When men speak with intensity, they are called strong; when women do, they are called angry. When white politicians raise their voices, they are labeled passionate; when black women do, they are called unprofessional. Crockett's unapologetic tone dismantles those stereotypes by refusing to tone herself down for anyone's comfort. She stands in her power, knowing that the system is often rigged against her, yet she uses that resistance as fuel. Every time she speaks truth to power, she forces a reckoning not just within Congress but within society itself. She reminds people that representation is not just about occupying a seat, it's about shaking the table once you get there. Her message about accountability and hypocrisy strikes at the core of America's current political divide. Crockett understands that the real battle is not just between Democrats and Republicans but between truth and deception, between those who uphold democratic values and those who manipulate them for personal gain. Her insistence on calling out lies and contradictions isn't about scoring political points, it's about preserving integrity in a time when misinformation spreads faster than facts. She represents a rare kind of leadership that prioritizes principle over popularity, one that refuses to play nice when the stakes are too high. Crockett's voice also resonates because she speaks not from privilege but from experience. She knows what it means to struggle, to work for every inch of progress, to face doors that others walk through freely. Her authenticity comes from that lived experience, from understanding that political decisions are not abstract debates but real choices that determine whether families eat, whether students can afford education, and whether communities have clean water or safe housing. That grounding in reality gives her a moral authority that scripted politicians often lack. She doesn't speak in polished slogans, she speaks in truths that come from the heart of the communities she represents. Her willingness to confront hypocrisy also exposes a cultural truth, that America has long tolerated double standards as long as they benefit those in power. Crockett refuses to let that stand unchallenged. Whether addressing unfair treatment of marginalized groups or the manipulation of narratives by the media and political opponents, she brings a level of clarity that disrupts comfort zones. Her straightforwardness cuts through the fog of political spin, making her a voice that people can trust even when they don't fully agree with her. She doesn't hide behind diplomacy when honesty is needed. That combination of courage and authenticity is what gives her speeches their electricity. They don't just inform, they awaken. Crockett's rise represents more than individual success, it symbolizes the transformation of political culture itself. She is part of a wave of leaders who believe that transparency is power, that truth is revolutionary, and that silence in the face of injustice is complicity. Her presence signals to younger generations that they don't have to conform to be effective, that they can lead with both strength and sincerity. She stands as proof that authenticity is not a liability in politics, it is a weapon against corruption and complacency. Her insistence on calling out privilege and double standards extends beyond partisan politics. It's about demanding the same rules for everyone, regardless of status, wealth, or influence. In doing so, she exposes how selective accountability has eroded public trust. By speaking out, she forces those in power to confront their contradictions, the ones who preach morality but act in self-interest, who call for unity but spread division, who claim patriotism while undermining democracy. Crockett's fire comes from watching those contradictions harm real people, and her refusal to stay silent gives her voice a moral gravity that few can match. In an era where so many leaders speak in rehearsed soundbites, Jasmine Crockett's rawness feels like truth breaking through the static. She reminds people that progress does not come from comfort but from confrontation, that speaking truth is not about anger but about integrity, and that leadership means standing firm even when standing alone. Her courage represents a growing movement that values truth over theatrics, justice over convenience, and authenticity over approval. Each time she speaks, she gives power back to the people who feel ignored, proving that in a world full of noise, an honest voice can still cut through and make people listen.